She was a little apprehensive, but she has a reputation for being pretty feisty, very confident. Prince George may be the eldest child, but I think it's Charlotte who calls the shots and has everyone running rings around her.
Windsor Castle carried its centuries-old air of solemn grandeur and royal history. Behind the tall, magnificent stained-glass windows, the royal family's intimate tea gathering after the christening of a young relative unfolded in what appeared to be perfect, traditional peace. Yet beneath the outer splendor and the polite clinking of porcelain cups always lay hidden currents of power, deep memory, and emotional wounds that had never truly healed through the passage of time. In a sunlit corner of the grand drawing room, Prince William, the heir to the British throne, stood watching his daughter with tender and protective eyes. As a man who bore the heavy burden of duty and the lingering pain of the past, protecting his small family and preserving the sacred values of his late mother, Princess Diana, had always been his greatest purpose in life. Today, in this historic setting, he had decided to do something he had contemplated for a very long time. He gently approached Princess Charlotte, his 11-year-old daughter, who was growing more confident, highly intelligent, and strikingly reminiscent of her late grandmother with each passing year. Charlotte was a sensitive yet remarkably resilient girl, always proud of the bloodline and family values she had inherited. William leaned down, his warm hand resting lightly on his daughter's shoulder to give her comfort. From the inner pocket of his impeccably tailored vest, he drew out a small, time-worn velvet box that held a deep secret. When the lid opened, a beautiful silver bracelet gleamed elegantly under the evening light. It was far more than mere jewelry. It was a priceless heirloom that had once belonged to Princess Diana in her youth, a treasure William had carefully safeguarded for nearly 3 decades since that fateful autumn of 1997. To him, the bracelet was an invisible yet unbreakable link between the past and the future. He gently fastened it around Charlotte's slender wrist, whispering words of love, strength, and stories about the legendary grandmother she had never had the chance to meet in person. Charlotte gazed at the sparkling silver on her wrist, feeling its physical warmth and the immense weight of history it carried. A deep sense of pride and reverence swelled within her young heart as she admired the piece. Meanwhile, across the busy room, Queen Camilla stood conversing with a few distinguished guests. Having weathered countless storms alongside the king to reach her current position, Camilla possessed a keen sensitivity to every single detail around her. Her relationship with her husband's children, especially William, had always carried an invisible distance, a polite but not entirely cordial dynamic carefully masked by impeccable royal protocol. Her sharp eyes suddenly froze as they swept across the corner where the father and daughter stood together. Her attention was instantly captured by the flash of silver light on the young princess's wrist. The world around Camilla seemed to slow down instantly. Memories from decades past, days of fierce confrontation, and the ghosts of the past surged forward as she recognized the familiar design of the bracelet. It was the very piece Diana had worn on so many high-profile occasions, events Camilla had never wanted to remember. The sudden appearance of the bracelet at this private family gathering felt like a provocative reminder of a woman long gone, yet never truly absent from the public consciousness or the family's own dynamics. The atmosphere around Camilla shifted abruptly from royal grace to intense agitation. The polite smile on her lips stiffened, her eyes narrowing with visible unease. Curiosity mixed with complex, hard-to-name emotions drove her to verify what she had just seen. Camilla quietly excused herself from the group, slowly stepping away from the crowd. She adjusted her attire, reclaiming her usual composed and regal demeanor, then began walking toward the corner where Charlotte was innocently admiring her new gift. Each step the queen took carried an invisible pressure, signaling a dramatic turning point about to unfold beneath the ancient arches of Windsor Castle. Queen Camilla's slow but commanding steps came to a halt right in front of Princess Charlotte. The sudden appearance of the most powerful woman in the royal household instantly thickened the air around them. Rather than her usual distant demeanor, Camilla tried to offer a warm, affectionate smile, her gentle eyes seemingly filled with nothing more than a grandmother's pure curiosity about her granddaughter's new trinket. As for Charlotte, despite carrying the proud royal bloodline and her innate sensitivity, she was still only an 11-year-old girl. Faced with a seemingly friendly attitude and unexpected attention from the Queen, her natural weariness temporarily eased. Charlotte looked up, gave a polite smile, and obediently extended her small hand, revealing the silver bracelet sparkling in the afternoon sunlight, completely unaware of the storm quietly brewing behind the other woman's eyes. Camilla leaned down, pretending to admire the exquisite engravings on the piece of history. At first, her fingertips only lightly touched the cool metal, slowly tracing the classic patterns. However, the tangible feel of the bracelet quickly ignited the flames of jealousy and bitter memories she had tried so hard to bury for nearly half a century. This silver bracelet, with its distinctive shine and unique signs of age, could belong to no one but the woman who had been her greatest torment in life. Its presence on a child's wrist, right in the middle of an official family event, felt like an invisible slap to her current status as queen. A sudden surge of anger completely clouded her reason and the usual caution of someone accustomed to strict diplomatic protocols. Camilla's actions began to shift alarmingly. From gently examining it, her fingers suddenly tightened around Charlotte's slender wrist. Instead of simply lifting the bracelet to look at it, the Queen's fingers searched for the clasp with strange haste and roughness. She deliberately twisted the bracelet hard, rubbing it roughly against the young princess's delicate skin, clearly intending to remove the heirloom from its owner at once. The abrupt change from a simple request to view the jewelry to a crude act of seizure happened in mere seconds, freezing the space around them. A few nearby guests and royal family members began to notice the unusual scene. The soft chatter around them gradually faded, replaced by eyes turning toward the corner of the room. The noble faces that always maintained perfect composure and practiced smiles suddenly froze in shock. They could hardly believe their eyes as they witnessed the woman at the head of the monarchy losing control and struggling over a piece of jewelry with a child in broad daylight. Astonishment mixed with horror spread like electricity, plunging the entire drawing room into a tense, suffocating silence. At the center of the attention, Charlotte felt a sharp pain shoot through her wrist. Her initial innocence vanished completely, replaced by a torrent of confused emotions. The young girl was stunned to realize her step-grandmother's improper intentions. Charlotte's eyes flashed with confusion and hurt, but almost immediately, her instinct for self-defense and the resilience inherited from her father awakened heightened vigilance within her. Charlotte did not cry, nor did she show fear. She pressed her lips tightly together, gathered strength in her small arm, and decisively pulled back a step, creating a safe distance. The young princess's blue eyes stared straight at the powerful woman before her. Gone was the respect of a junior. Now there was only weariness, icy sharpness, and a surprising firmness. Princess Charlotte's quiet resistance did not awaken Queen Camilla to reason. Instead, it was like fuel thrown onto the fire of her wounded pride, a woman long accustomed to total obedience. Seeing the small arm pulled back, a raw, instinctive fury blazed in Camilla's eyes, completely clouding the judgment of someone who stood above others. She took a long step forward, closing the distance that had just been created, and once again raised her hands adorned with priceless jeweled rings. Determined and stubborn, she reached toward the little girl's wrist. The Queen clung desperately to the thought that she must seize the silver bracelet, as if doing so would erase the ghost of the past that now stood before her, regardless of how far her actions had strayed beyond the bounds of elegance and royal protocol. Charlotte stood motionless, keenly aware of the suffocating pressure and brutality closing in on her. At 11 years old, facing such imposition from the most powerful woman in the royal household, any other child might have burst into tears or sought help from an adult. But not Charlotte. The moment Camilla's fingers touched her skin again, the young princess realized this was no longer a misunderstanding or an old woman's excessive curiosity. It was an intrusion, a deliberate attempt to seize the sacred heirloom her father had just given her. The initial confusion and hurt in her heart quickly gave way to a clear-headed awakening. The proud blood of those who defended the monarchy flowed through her veins, granting her an eerie calm. Instead of shrinking back or showing fear, Charlotte straightened her spine, lifted her chin slightly, and assumed a posture of astonishing dignity for a child. She did not scream, nor did she use force to struggle. She chose instead to confront the situation with unyielding mental strength. When Camilla's hand was only inches away from the bracelet, Charlotte looked straight into the older woman's eyes, which burned with fury. The young princess's small lips pressed tightly together, then parted as she spoke in a voice just loud enough to be heard, yet as sharp and resolute as a blade cutting through the tense air. "That doesn't belong to you." The words carried no rudeness, yet they held the immense weight of truth and absolute ownership. It was a red line drawn by a child, directly exposing the queen's wrongful behavior in front of everyone present. Instantly, a deathly silence fell over the entire drawing room of Windsor Castle. The soft clinking of silver spoons against porcelain cups ceased completely. Half-finished conversations among the guests hung unfinished in the air. Powerful figures and royal attendants alike seemed turned to stone where they stood, their breathing suddenly cautious. The whole room plunged into absolute stillness, where even the smallest sound would have been deafening. All eyes, no longer discreetly curious, now filled with utter shock and astonishment, converged on the two figures. They were stunned not only by the queen's actions, but even more so by the courage, determination, and unyielding resolve of the young princess who had just proven that the legacy and proud spirit of her late grandmother lived on fiercely alive within her. In the deathly silence that had fallen over the grand drawing room of Windsor Castle, the tension reached its absolute peak as Princess Charlotte's courageous and sharp words still seemed to echo beneath the ancient, historic arches. At that very suffocating moment, a tall, imposing figure emerged from behind the heavy oak-paneled archway, changing the dynamic of the entire room instantly. Prince William appeared, his bearing dignified yet his steps carrying an unusual, palpable urgency that everyone could feel. With one sweeping, highly experienced glance at the unnatural silence of the gathered guests, Queen Camilla's icy, agitated stare, and his young daughter's defensive stance, the father and protector within him instantly recognized that something was deeply wrong. The sharp sensitivity of a man who had weathered the worst storms of royal life allowed him to grasp the entire situation without needing a single word of explanation from anyone. William's face darkened significantly, his brows knitting together into a deep, prominent furrow on his forehead that signaled immense displeasure. Painful memories of defending what little remained of his late mother surged up from the depths of his heart, igniting a fierce flame of anger that was tightly controlled only by his iron will and royal training. Without a single moment of hesitation, he strode across the open space with long, decisive steps, passing through the uneasy, wide-eyed gazes of the crowd and heading straight toward the absolute center of the conflict. Upon reaching Charlotte's side, his very first action was to place a large, steady, and warm hand on his daughter's slightly trembling shoulder. It was a silent but incredibly powerful affirmation to the young girl and everyone in the room that he was there, and no one, regardless of rank, had the right to harm, question, or coerce her. William shifted his body skillfully, positioning himself directly between Camilla and Charlotte, using his broad back as an impenetrable, protective shield for his daughter. When he turned his head to face his stepmother, the eyes of the Prince of Wales were no longer those of a polite, deferential junior complying with palace protocol. They were as sharp as professional blades, filled with a dangerous fury and the ultimate warning that needed no translation. He stared directly into Camilla's wavering, stunned eyes, every single line of his body radiating an overwhelming authority that demanded a proper, immediate accounting for her actions that had crossed every acceptable boundary of family decency. Under William's commanding presence and fierce protectiveness toward his daughter, the atmosphere in the drawing room grew even more suffocating for the onlookers. He did not resort to loud insults, undignified shouts, or uncontrolled gestures that would create a public scandal for the tabloids. Instead, he expressed his deep, protective anger through a stern, chilling demeanor that was truly terrifying to behold. With a slow, deliberate, and decisive motion, he gently lifted Charlotte's arm, the one wearing the contested silver bracelet, holding the priceless heirloom up so it sparkled directly before Camilla's eyes like irrefutable evidence of a crime. His gaze remained fixed on the queen, silently affirming an undeniable, powerful truth that shook the older woman to her core. This silver bracelet was the living memory, the very soul of Princess Diana, and it now rightfully, legally, and sacredly belonged to Charlotte as her granddaughter. No one, regardless of how exalted their current status in the monarchy might be, had the right to touch it, judge it, or attempt to take it from her ever again. Camilla suddenly found herself at a massive, unprecedented disadvantage in a room she usually dominated. The powerful woman who had always prided herself on her absolute ability to control any social situation and manipulation now faced open, direct, and completely uncompromising opposition from the direct heir to the throne. In William's icy eyes, she saw not only a father's fierce protection but also the unyielding resolve of a man ready to tear down any facade of false peace to defend his mother's legacy. The collective gaze of dozens of royal family members and distinguished guests around them felt like sharp needles piercing through her remaining pride. Camilla stood completely rooted to the spot, her face shifting rapidly from a state of burning rage to stunned, embarrassed immobility before the hard red line William had just drawn in front of everyone present. The direct, silent confrontation between Prince William and Queen Camilla beneath the majestic arches of Windsor Castle had pushed the already thick atmosphere into a new, even more suffocating chapter. The resolve of a man who had weathered countless public and private storms of life was etched into every single muscle on William's face as he stood his ground. He chose not to raise his voice or create a loud, messy scene that would disrupt the solemnity of the christening event. Yet his silent, steel-hard demeanor and ice-cold gaze carried a devastating power that completely neutralized the Queen's authority. William stood tall, his presence as majestic and unyielding as an emperor delivering a final ultimatum, silently sending the message that he would never tolerate any action aimed at violating or seizing the sacred mementos of his late mother. This was no longer merely about protecting a simple piece of vintage jewelry. It was about defending the final, untouchable red line of dignity, honor, and family memory that he was willing to safeguard with his life and status. Facing the overwhelming psychological pressure from her husband's eldest son, Queen Camilla began to feel her usual, carefully crafted mask of perfect composure cracking apart. Her hands, which always clasped together with graceful poise in front of the cameras, now tightened subtly, her fingers digging deep into her own palms to suppress the physical trembling born of absolute rage and public humiliation. Her chest rose and fell rapidly beneath her expensive, custom silk gown as she tried to process the defeat. Camilla tried to straighten up, desperately searching the room for a sympathetic glance or a quick rescue from those around her, but all she received were averted heads, sudden coughs, or pitying, judgmental looks from the extended family members who had witnessed the whole ordeal. A profound isolation and awkwardness closed in on the powerful queen, turning her from the matriarch into the focal point of a silent, yet completely unanimous condemnation from the entire room. In the very eye of this emotional storm, Princess Charlotte stood close by her father's side, drawing immense strength from his presence. Yet her posture held absolutely none of the weakness or vulnerability that typically invited pity from adults. The arm wearing the sparkling silver bracelet hung naturally at her side, but her small fingers curled slightly into tight fists, showing a firm, adult-like determination to stand her ground. Charlotte looked up at her father's broad, reliable shoulder, feeling the absolute protective energy enveloping her, which only strengthened her confidence to face the queen. Though she was easily the youngest person in a room full of the country's most powerful and influential figures, the young princess did not avoid Camilla's glaring gaze for even a second. Her clear, piercing blue eyes stared straight at the woman opposite her with an eerie calm and a profound maturity that went far beyond her tender years, serving as living, undeniable proof that Diana's spirit had truly flowed into the next generation. The unyielding, combined strength of father and daughter formed an impregnable wall, completely cutting off any avenue of retreat or excuse for Camilla. Realizing she had utterly failed to impose her authority on a child and was now suffering a massive public humiliation under the watchful eyes of the entire royal family, the queen's anger transformed into a bitter, burning resentment. Her face flushed a deep red before quickly turning pale with an overwhelming sense of shame. Unable to endure another single second in this mortifying, judgmental atmosphere, Camilla suddenly turned sharply on her heel. The sharp, echoey click of her designer heels struck the hard stone floor as she walked away briskly without saying a word to anyone. She moved incredibly fast, the hem of her expensive dress swaying with each furious step as she headed straight for the side door of the grand tea room. The figure of the woman at the head of the royal household gradually disappeared behind the heavy wood door that closed with a decisive thud, leaving behind a silent space filled with the swirling, chaotic thoughts of everyone present. Camilla's bitter, forced retreat did not merely end the immediate confrontation. It officially carved a massive, permanent, and irreparable crack into the power relations and fragile unity within Windsor Palace, a shift that everyone in the room knew would change the family dynamics forever. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind Queen Camilla's hurried retreat, its solid thud echoing faintly through the grand drawing room and bringing a quiet yet deeply resonant sense of release to the historic halls of Windsor Castle. The suffocating pressure that had gripped the room for what felt like an eternity slowly began to dissolve like thick fog lifting after a massive storm. In its place, a new, subtle vitality spread through the air, allowing the royal guests to breathe freely once more. As the tension finally eased, the eyes that had been fixed on Princess Charlotte no longer held any trace of hesitation or lingering shock. Instead, they shone with profound admiration and quiet respect. People began to stir again, and soft murmurs of approval rose gently from every corner of the room, gradually filling the space with a warmer atmosphere. A few senior members of the royal family slowly made their way toward the young princess, offering respectful nods and reassuring touches on her small shoulder. In this 11-year-old girl, they recognized something extraordinary, a rare courage, an unshakable confidence, and a steadfast determination to stand up for what was right, even when confronted by the highest authority in the land. The warm June sunset poured its final golden rays through the tall stained glass windows, bathing the room in a soft glow that fell directly onto the silver bracelet encircling Charlotte's wrist. What had once been simply an old piece of jewelry had now transcended its physical form to become a powerful living symbol of a sacred legacy passed down through generations. By fearlessly protecting her father's precious gift, young Charlotte had proven herself the most worthy heir to Princess Diana's indomitable spirit. Standing protectively beside his daughter, Prince William quietly observed the scene, feeling a powerful wave of paternal pride swell deep within his chest. His eyes, which had long carried a trace of sadness from the tragedies of his youth, now sparkled with genuine relief and joy. He gently squeezed Charlotte's shoulder, knowing that the decision to entrust his mother's cherished heirloom to her had been entirely right. William understood that the road ahead within the complex world of the monarchy would still be filled with countless challenges, yet Charlotte's remarkable resilience had infused him with renewed purpose. In the silence of his heart, the Prince of Wales made a solemn vow to use every ounce of his honor and position to shield his children from harm while carefully preserving the loving legacy his beloved mother had left behind, transforming it into an eternal lighthouse to guide them through any future storms.